How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
There's a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
We're bantering again.
It sounds even cooler when we say that that's what we're doing.
It's just like we were just sitting in a room and didn't know that we were being recorded, and we were just talking, and then somebody started recording us, and then we decided we would turn it into a podcast.
It sounds completely not stiff, as though we are friends who do things together. Legit. Well, I guess we'll get this thing started. We're in part 2 anyway, so these people are ready for us to continue this story and not hear about our bullshit. So, well, hello, and welcome back to Cinema Shock, the show that digs deep into the stories behind your favorite cult and genre movies. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horne.
I'm your other host, Justin Bishop. Welcome to part 2 of our look at Inland Empire and the final episode, Gary, of our series, David Lynch Between Two Worlds. It feels like we've been doing David Lynch for like a year and a half now. We had some breaks in between. We talked about Jim Henson for like 6 months, and then we talked about virtual reality movies for a while. So I think we started David Lynch in like the beginning of 2024. Does that sound right?
That does feel right.
The first David Lynch series.
When you add in how long it feels watching some of these movies, it feels like it's been a decade. So I kid, old Dave.
You just have to
Lynch.
throw that in since Todd's not here to do it.
Right. I have to do the thing that Todd would do. I love David Lynch, so I'm not gonna shit on his films.
No, it's been quite the journey, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So
I will say, if you're new to David Lynch and you started with this one, you're probably questioning.
Yeah, this is definitely not the David Lynch movie you want to like. This is like jumping into the deep end of the pool with concrete strapped to your feet.
Right.
This is not what you do. So anyway, when we left off in the last episode, David Lynch had just picked up a $4,000 mini DV camera and basically decided to reinvent his entire filmmaking process. No scripts, no schedule, no studio oversight. What started as a handful of scenes about a woman in trouble was quickly turning into something much bigger, a project that would stretch across continents, languages, and entire states of consciousness. This is the point where the film starts to evolve, where Lynch's restless curiosity leads him somewhere entirely new, both artistically and literally. So welcome back to the conclusion of our series, David Lynch Between Two Worlds, and to the last podcast you'll ever need about David Lynch's Inland Empire. And as always, before we get going, we want to give a huge shout out to our Cinema Shock Plus subscribers for keeping this show running. Y'all are the ones funding our descent into David Lynch's subconscious, and we very, very much appreciate it. If you're not a member yet, you can fix that. We'll tell you how at the end of the episode. But for everyone who has already joined, thank you.
We appreciate you.
That sounds so...
I got to get something ready to say that's very heartfelt about our subscribers. I don't know.
It sounded so sincere, Gary. My sister Meg thanks you, and I thank you. That was a White Stripes reference. That's what he said at the end of his Hall of Fame induction. I thought it was nice.
That is nice.
So most of Inland Empire was filmed in Los Angeles, but Lynch also shot extensively in Łódź, Poland. I had to look up how you pronounce that because I didn't want to fuck it up. I will probably fuck up some of the Polish names, but I'm going to do my damnedest.
We ran across this with Possession, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah,
like that.
The Polish language is wild, man. Like this is spelled with a letter that looks like an L but has a slash through it, followed by an O with an accent, followed by a D, followed by a Z with an accent, but it's pronounced Łódź, Poland. I didn't admit the language. I don't understand the language.
I saw it listed in some places. They would put like a W-O in front of it or something like that.
You pronounce it like it's a W-O.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
Yeah, very strange. But anyway, Lynch did shoot a lot of this in Łódź, Poland. This is his first time working outside of the U.S. since Dune and the Elephant Man. Other than that, he's worked exclusively in the U.S. He had first visited that city in 2000 as a guest of the Camera Image Festival of Cinematography, and it left a mark on him. The industrial sprawl of Łódź, its soot-stained factories, cracked courtyards, and fog-hung streets reminded him of Eraserhead's Philadelphia, a landscape buzzing with ghosts. Like, you could see how that would appeal to him. The city also carried real historical weight. During World War II, Łódź was the home of one of the largest Jewish ghettos in Europe, a place of immense suffering, loss, and memory that was still felt in its streets 50 years later.
It's very interesting that we're at the end here, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but I just bringing it up here, just the way that like Eraserhead was filmed, like the city there and stuff like that. It just feels like he's going back to a little bit of that like desire, like that decay,
back to his roots a little bit.
Yeah. And I did see where he said there was one interview where like they were like, it was partly filmed in Poland. Why did you do that? And his answer was, that's where the ideas led me. I have friends that run the Camera Image Film Festival in Poland, and they came to visit me in the year 2000, 4 of them, and they wanted me to come to their festival. And I love factories, and I love nude women. And the guy's like, in which order? And he said, they're pretty much equal. I said, could you guys get me into some of those factories? I've heard about it because it was a big industrial area in Poland. And they said, absolutely. And I said, could you also get me nude women at night? And they said, no problem. And they were true to their word. They became great friends to me. I started. He said, I love the mood of Łódź, Poland in the winter. It was very interesting architecture and these black trees and the hanging gray clouds and these factories. I started to dream, some scenes came, and those scenes and other ideas came into Inland Empire. But anyway, the important takeaway, David Lynch loves factories and nude women at night. So
yeah, well, I mean, he not during the day, just at night.
Right.
Well, he did take photos of those factories that they found him. Like he did a whole series of images, and I think he did a showing of them years later in like 2013 of all these black and white images that he had taken of the factories there in Poland.
There's some stuff here that I'm not going to know a ton about, but I did read also that he did like a 3-minute short there too called The Green Room in 2002.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one.
That's what I read, but he shot it with the PD 150, like it was like a digital short. But I don't know if that was like a experiment or like a test run to
something on his website, maybe.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, Łódź is also the home to Poland's National Film School, where filmmakers like Roman Polanski, Andrzej Wajda, and Krzysztof Kowalski got their start. For Lynch, that connection to cinematic history and creative reinvention only deepened the city's pull. It felt like the opposite of Hollywood. One half of the dream bathed in California sun, the other steeped in smoke and shadow. He actually toyed with the idea of opening a film studio in Poland, and he talked about it in interviews, and it kind of fell apart, didn't happen for whatever reason.
There is a weird cinematic homage here, apparently. And again, I'm talking out of school a little bit because I've never seen this, but the whole lost girl sitting alone in the room crying while she's watching the screen, it's apparently like thematically, it's kind of like this thing called, it's the character of the Watcher who is in Krzysztof Kowalski's The Decalogue in 1989, and it's like it's apparently about like the character like observes protagonists in each of the 10 episodes of this thing. So I did read a few places that reference that like Lynch is definitely like homaging that with like a haunted observer kind of thing. So just thought I'd bring that up here.
No, I mean, that makes sense. And I've never seen the Decalogue. I've been aware of it for years, but it's intimidating. It's like 9 hours long. So I've never sat down to watch the whole thing. Now, setting up the shoot in Poland wasn't difficult thanks to his camera image contacts. He had people, probably the same guys who helped him find factories and nude women, who could help him like find actors and things like that in locations. He had those connections to help him out, but it still presented some challenges because he's still shooting outside of Hollywood, outside of like where there is a major film industry. For instance, in one sequence in the film, Lynch wanted lightning inside of this house they were shooting in, which is this historic mansion that they had rented. The crew didn't have the gear for that. They're like, we don't have that kind of machine. Like Lynch's crew, like on Lost Highway, I remember them talking about like, we always just travel with a lightning machine, even if it's not in the script, because we know at some point he's going to ask for lightning. So they just had one ready to go. The crew in Poland didn't have that. They didn't have the stuff to make fake lightning. So they improvised. They used a welding machine wrapped in fireproof blankets and somehow convinced the museum director who ran this like historic mansion that it was perfectly safe.
Whatever crew member did that deserves an Oscar for best performance by a liar. Oh, this welder, it's European lighting. It's perfectly safe. Please look away from the 5,000 degree sparks next to your tapestry.
Don't stare at it.
Right. Who knew that David Lynch, on top of all of his other skills, he has the ability to sell, I guess, as well.
And then there was the cold. So Lynch brought Laura Dern, Emily Stoffel, and Kristen Kerr, all actresses from the film, still dressed in summery San Fernando Valley outfits. So they're all in like tank tops and shorts. Brings them to Poland in the dead of winter. There's snow all over the place. Temperatures dropped to 30 below. And they could only shoot for a minute or two before they had to race into. They had an idling van over near off the side of the set where they'd had the heat cranked up. And so between takes, they'd shoot for a minute, then they'd run into the van to warm up as much as they could warm up. And they'd sometimes thaw out using, eating hot goulash and drinking vodka before heading back out into the frost.
Dern's dressed for like a smoothie run on Sunset Boulevard, and Lynch is like putting her in a cryo chamber, and she's like in a saw trap here. That's not a filmmaking thing. It's they're using vodka for antifreeze.
Yeah.
And I picture the whole time you see the beautiful shot, but what you don't see is the actresses immediately being dragged off camera and thrown in a running van and being like force-fed goulash while they're trying to restart like a frozen car engine or something.
Yeah, Lynch said that he could see their like muscles tighten as they were filming because it was so cold.
Meanwhile, he's in there the whole time. He's just like watching on a monitor and drinking cappuccino. And it's like, oh, that's great, Laura. You're doing so good.
In another sequence, Lynch wanted a circus, specifically a circus with dancing horses. Now, there were only 2 circuses in all of Poland at this time, but by pure coincidence, or maybe it's just that unified theory thing, one of them, when they called him, they happened to be in Łódź that very day, setting up their tent, so he was able to shoot there.
Again, the most Lynchian thing ever. He doesn't have to call a circus. He just wills it into existence. I desire dancing horses. The universe is like, oh, okay. Here's a rando Polish circus. You got to stop meditating so hard, dude.
Lynch also, of course, cast several Polish actors in the film. You've got a guy named Krzysztof. God damn it. There's so many consonants in these Polish names. It is Krzysztof Majwszak as the Phantom. Peter J. Lucas, which is a very un-Polish name,
right,
as Sue's husband, Piotrek, and Karolina Gruszka. I had to look up how to say her name.
I love this. You're doing so good. It feels
Karolina Gruszka. You have to roll the R as the lost girl. Now, that last character, her scenes were directly inspired. You mentioned this early on, Gary, but they were directly inspired by an early web short that Lynch had filmed for his website called The Darkened Room. Came out in 2002. That starred Jordan Ladd, who does show up here in a small role. She's one of the Valley girls who hangs out with Laura Dern's character. She has 1 or 2 lines, I think. It's not a big role, but that original short film, The Darkened Room, it features several motifs that later reappear in Inland Empire. You've got the crying woman in a dark room. There's the image of a cigarette burn in a silk slip and a ticking watch. It's one of the clearest examples of how his digital experiments flowed directly into the finished film. Now, you mentioned earlier The Dark Room, like you had seen it. Were you able to track it down? Because
I pretty much read a description of what happened in it.
Yeah, I've read a description and found a couple of screenshots, but I could not find a copy of it online anywhere. I saw some references to it on Reddit and on Internet Archive and even on some like YouTube playlists that were like David Lynch short films, but it wasn't there. Like it had been scrubbed from the internet, which I know David Lynch wanted a lot of his internet work, like in his last will and testament, a lot of stuff that he didn't personally distribute, he wanted it to be scrubbed off of the internet. It seems like somebody went and did that after he passed away. The Darkened Room was included on this out of print DVD release that was called like the Green Box or something. It's Dynamic One, I think, is the actual name of the DVD, but it was a DVD collection that is now long out of print that collected a lot of the shorts and things from davidlynch.com. And I wish I could get it. It's out there. It's on eBay. It's just a little pricey. It's a collector's item these days. So if anyone really wants to gift us something, that we'll take that. I'll take that. I can't speak for Gary. I did want to talk, however, about how this motif of the cigarette burn and the silk and the ticking watch. I want to talk a little bit about that because it does become incredibly integral to Inland Empire's story, even if it's hard to figure out exactly what it all means. So I wanted to ask you, Gary, what do you make of that motif? Like, did you come across it in your research, come across any theories on what this means? Because it does sets some things into motion towards the end of the film.
The best explanation I could kind of piece together was that it was like, it would represent like violation, like burning into like a silk slip, like it's intimate, fragile, like it, like you're damaging this nice thing, basically. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but it just like, it's almost like it's like what turns you into, like, it's like this person going, like something going from nice to like one of the lost, like you mentioned before or something.
Okay. Yeah. Which of course ties into the overall kind of what the movie's about.
Yeah. And that seems about right. Like that seems like it makes sense. The ticking watch thing, I almost look at that as like in Lynch, it's never about time necessarily, unless it's like a loop or something. So maybe
which
that's
a watch
part of it
is, a watch points to the specific time, but it is overall a never-ending loop.
So like the burn is the point, the event of the trauma, and then like maybe that's just like the ticking of like this is ongoing or like this is forever. Like I don't know, maybe it is like the loop of the whole thing. I'm trying, but I don't know how well I pieced that together.
Well, I mean, I think you're going in the right direction, and I mean, I don't know that I have an answer to it as well. When the Lost Girl gives Nikki or Sue, whatever you want to call her, the instructions, the burn, the watch, the walk through the alley, like she gives her these specific instructions. It feels like a ritual that she's passing along, Now the watch I have a harder time with, although I think you're onto something about it being sort of a never ending cycle, this cycle of trauma, cycle of abuse. But the cigarette burn, I think it's particularly symbolic, the way that it's filmed, the way that it's shown in the film, because it becomes a portal, a rupture that she looks through. Like kind of almost like a rupture in the fabric of reality, and this is a movie that's filled with portals, with people walking through doors and then finding themselves in another reality. And I think this is sort of one more of those. We see a lot of those throughout Lynch's work. Think of the portal to the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks, or the blue box in Mulholland Drive. This entryway into another layer of reality. I think the hole in the silk here kind of serves a similar function. It's an entry point between the real world, the quote unquote real world where the Lost Girl resides, and Nikki's world, Laura Dern's world. But also keep in mind that a cigarette burn is an old projection turn.
That's
right?
a good point. Yeah.
If you've seen Fight Club, you'll remember Tyler Durden pointing it out in the corner of the film. And what those are in the world of projection, in the world of film, is that they are an indicator of a real change. On one hand, Lynch using that reference, if that's what he's doing in a movie that's not shot on film, is a little ironic. But thematically, it could be Lynch signaling that something is about to change. That cigarette burn indicates that, just like a projector, it's time for the reel to change. In this case, the movie is about to become something else. So that's something that, again, I don't know. We don't know Lynch's intention on this. He doesn't talk about it. So we're just guessing here.
Maybe he's just directly like trying to make a film about somebody subscribing to his website, and they're just like their only entertainment is just like watching the fuzzy video of themselves crying or something, and then they're just like, why am I paying $10 a month for this? What am I paying for here?
I mean, narratively, when Nikki follows the instructions that the Lost Girl gives her, she's able to cross through layers of reality and reach the Lost Girl. It's that moment when Laura Dern's character dies, when she gets stabbed and dies, and I'm kind of putting that word in air quotes because, who knows. But she then, after she dies, she appears in the Lost Girl's hotel room, and she frees the Lost Girl from that hotel room that she's trapped in. So if we think about Inland Empire as a movie about creation and empathy, about an actress who so fully merges with a role that she redeems the trauma that it was based on, which is, if we get into it, that's the Lost Girl's life, or the original Polish film, or however she's connected to that. Then that little cigarette burn in the silk is the portal through which art, her creation, her acting, her performance becomes healing. And I think that is sort of the movie's central paradox, and it's something that ties in with a lot of like David Lynch's philosophy, is that to destroy illusion, you have to burn it. In this case, like that's the act of creation.
And that sounds like a really smart analysis, Justin. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Gary.
That's better than anything I pieced together, I think.
I thought about it a lot because something about that cigarette burn thing, just because it's on the record, it's like there's so much about it that it feels like Lynch is highlighting its importance, that I wanted to try to dig into what it might mean. And the silk almost looks like a movie screen once you like zoom in on it. And there are so many ways you could probably read that, and whether any of them are right, who the hell knows, but that's the best I got. So when filming on Inland Empire finally wound down, Lynch holed up in his home office and edited the entire film himself on Final Cut Pro. Now, his longtime editor and producing partner, Mary Sweeney, wasn't involved in the editing process this time. As she later explained, quote, "There wasn't a real organized script to go by, and no one knew what was going on except him," which is probably true, because as an editor, you do kind of have to go by the script, and there's not really one here. But I think that's also only part of the story, because around this same time, Lynch and Sweeney's personal relationship ended. After 15 years together, they'd had a kid. They were not married, but they lived together as partners for 15 years. During production, Lynch began seeing Emily Stoffel, one of the young actresses in Inland Empire. She's one of the SoCal girls that Nikki or Sue or whoever, I'm just going to say Laura Dern, because it's hard for me to know which one she is in any given scene. One of the girls that Laura Dern hangs out with. She is, if you need to know which one she is, she's the one that shows her boobies. And then all the other girls start talking about how pretty they are. That's the girl that David Lynch started a relationship with while making this movie. And they later married and had a daughter. Their daughter's name was Lula, named, of course, after Laura Dern's character in Wild at Heart.
He 100%, I guess he probably saw those boobs and was like,
I want them.
Yeah, I want them. That was like, it was like where Terry Crews, it was like, I like your face. Well, you see what happened here. This means, though, that Laura Dern, who starred in the film that I think broke up his relationship with Isabella Rossellini, was the lead actress in the film that ended his relationship with Mary Sweeney, and now is the patron saint of his new family. So that's incredible gratitude, or like a real, I don't know, some kind of psychological torture or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I mean, when Mary Sweeney and David Lynch split up, I mean, obviously she was upset. It wasn't like an all of a sudden thing. Like, she saw the writing on the wall kind of thing. You know, they had started seeing each other, him and Emily Stoffel, as, you know, earlier on during this process. But Lynch, I mean, obviously cheating on your partner is not a good thing to do. So I'm not justifying that. But he did actually get married to Mary Sweeney. As this process was going on, they were married for a month and then they divorced. And apparently the reason he did that was so that she would be okay financially. She would be legally bound to receive money from him. And her son, obviously, their son together. That was sort of him, I guess, trying to make it right in like a weird way, at least do right by her in some kind of abstract way, you know?
Did they have like a big wedding and stuff still?
I think so. I think they probably went to the courthouse.
Yeah. Her explanation for not being involved this time sounded like the most high road way of saying, we broke up because he was hanging out with young actresses
who's 30 years younger than him.
Yeah. And then he's trying to show me 3-hour edits of rabbits and shit. So I was just like, you know what? I want out.
I'm going to dip out on this one.
Lynch did agree with Sweeney's assessment, stating he said like the digital editing went ahead and allowed him to be alone, and he was, quote, he would discover elements that you wouldn't if you were one step removed, like an ordinary editor. So he did feel like apparently it was important for him to go at it on his own and deal with the whole process. And she was still credited as a producer, co-producer,
Yeah.
or whatever on the movie. So
Right. And I mean, for a movie like this, for this movie specifically, I think having him in the editing suite is it makes sense because this movie's purely like David Lynch's subconscious. Like he's the only one who has any idea how these things are going to fit together. So nobody else would have been able to make this movie, I don't think. So over the next 6 months, Lynch shaped the film scene by scene in his home. It was really the first time since Eraserhead that he'd controlled every element of the film himself, writing, shooting, editing. This wasn't just another David Lynch movie. It was David Lynch in his purest, most unfiltered form.
it's definitely like a return to, like you said, Eraserhead, that whole method. And on that movie, it was like him and Alan Split. They had famously like spent over a year in the garage creating like the whole soundscape for like that movie. And for this one, he's like, I mean, he's his own solo sound designer, but he's building like a similar kind of industrial hum all on his own, I think.
Oh, yeah.
He described the editing process as a, quote, voyage of discovery, where the film wants to be a certain way and you only discover that right near the end. I feel like in some places I'd seen he had a philosophy that like the filmmaker should be part of every single element, every single word, sound, like every single thing in a movie, so you make sure it's holding together for like your vision. So it's good that I guess on the last one he's getting to have the experience of not like something like Dune where he had to make all these concessions and lost Final Cut and regretted everything, and at least Inland Empire allows him to go completely into free association like as far as he wants to.
I mean, every single element of this movie has David Lynch's handprints on it. Like he composed the score. He did the sound design, but that also includes the score, the music that we hear on this. That includes those low frequency drones and some smoky jazz textures into something that it's not your traditional score. It sounds like it's just bleeding out of the movie's subconscious. Like you can hear traces of Angelo Badalamenti's influence here, but this time it's darker, more inward, less melody, and more just like pure mood. Like you can't, I'll find myself whistling songs from like the Angelo Badalamenti scores. You're not going to whistle a whole lot from David Lynch's score here. There are, however, a few perfectly surreal musical drops in this, like some like needle drops that as we started recording today, I had one of them stuck in my head. So there's that. I mean, so at one point, these are all really fantastic because there are only a few, but they're used so well. I mean, he doesn't do needle drops a lot, but like the way he did them in Lost Highway and the way he does them here does show that David Lynch has a real knack for using existing music in his films, even if it's something he doesn't do a whole lot. At one point, it might be the first real needle drop in the film, other than that one at the very beginning during the Lost Girls scene. But at one point late in the film, it's probably 2 hours into the film, Laura Dern's character opens her eyes to find herself suddenly in Poland. That's the scene we were talking about earlier, where they're all in their like short shorts and tank tops, but standing in the middle of the snow. She opens her eyes, and it's underscored by a Lynch-penned, Lynch-sung track called Ghost of Love, which is maybe his most haunting musical moment. Honestly, I love David Lynch's music that he was creating after Inland Empire. I really love Ghost of Love. I love the album that it's on. It's just used really well. It's really creepy and weird and off-putting in a way that works really well for the scene. And then later on, Beck's Black Tambourine blast in mid-scene. This is when they're on Hollywood Boulevard. It turns this hypnosis into like whiplash. Like you hear it and you're like, what the fuck is going on right now? And as I was watching it, I watched it again yesterday and I had the subtitles on this time. And the lyrics to the songs come up during the subtitles as well. And the lyrics to Black Tambourine, as I was watching it, I was like, this really kind of ties into the plot of the film, because the chorus says, I know there's something wrong, which that's the whole fucking movie.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. It says, I know there's something wrong. Might take a fire to kill it. Might take a hurricane. Don't know what life I'm living, which also feels like, because that's going over footage of Laura Dern not knowing where the hell or who the hell she is at this moment in time, feels very fitting. And it's also such a stylistically different song than anything else we hear in the film that it's it makes for a really memorable sequence, I think.
That scene's the most, I don't know a good way to phrase it. Like, it's the most banging moment in a David Lynch movie I think there's ever been. Like,
it's great. It really is. It just
so
hits out of
cool.
nowhere.
That point about the lyrics too, that stands out to me too, because I always feel like even if he is picking a needle drop, like I feel like the lyrics, there's a purpose for them. It's not
Everything he does has a purpose. Even if you don't always know what it is, he's got a reason. Now, I don't know why he does the locomotion.
I was just about to say. So first of all, when that scene happens, I fucking lost my mind.
It's
like,
so good. It's one of my favorite.
I literally like jaw drop and was like, what is happening right now?
I think Bunny started applauding when it happened.
But if I had to think about it, I mean, I guess maybe I'm reaching, but it felt like that's like in this moment of, I don't know, her being around all these like these women. Like, what if you looked at it as though like now you're on this train and it's just going and you can't stop it. It's just already started. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's a reach, but it was just like, I fucking love that scene though.
It's great. It's apparently one of those scenes that he thought of after a meditation session, and it just like came to him. It's such a great moment, because you've got that moment right before where someone says like, you got to sway your hips now, because they're talking about the girl's boobs, and they say tits and ass or something like that. Then someone says you got to sway your hips, and then they all snap like in unison, and you're like, well, that's a weird little moment. And then it goes on, and then they start full on musical number,
right?
And then they disappear, and it's really unnerving because they disappear like mid word, I think. Oh, it's so good. It's one of my favorite moments in the movie, and I have no idea what the fuck it means. I just like it. And maybe that's all it matters, is the way it makes you feel. Like I said early on, sometimes it's more about the feeling than the meaning.
You know, that's a good point too, because it definitely is like this moment in the middle of the movie where you're just like, am I losing my goddamn mind right now? What is happening?
Yeah. And then you've got the film's closing number, not the one over the end credits, but in the end when the lost girl is being rescued. You hear this song early in the film when we first see the lost girl in her room with tears streaming down her face. But it's a song performed by Krista Bell, this marked the start of a long collaboration that would continue through multiple albums, and even into her role as Agent Tammy Preston in Twin Peaks: The Return. So she is an actress in Twin Peaks. I've never seen her act in anything else, but she has a pretty major role in Twin Peaks: The Return. Krista Bell does. But they were longtime collaborators. This song, it's called Polish Poem. David Lynch wrote the lyrics to it. Krista Bell sings and I think wrote the music to it. Beautiful song, very haunting. She's got a beautiful voice. But they did several albums together throughout the years. And in fact, Lynch's final creative release before his death was the 2024 album Cellophane Memories, which was another partnership with Krista Bell. It is credited to David Lynch and Krista Bell. It's a great album.
That song Polish Poem wasn't intended for the film originally. Like, you know, his sound engineer Dean Hurley found it. It was like on a hard drive or something.
Yeah, it's something they had worked on, because I know him and Krista Bell had met a little while before this.
Yeah, apparently pointed it out to David Lynch. She mentions in interviews, like, he just called her up and was like, hey, Dean just found this excellent song and I want to use it in this movie. And, you know, just asked her if it was cool with her. Just luck her again, the universe.
Well, by the time the Inland Empire was finished, Lynch had spent nearly 3 years writing, shooting, editing, and scoring it in really near total isolation. I mean, obviously not on set. He's not by himself, but this is almost a one-man show, much like Eraserhead. If Mulholland Drive was sort of Lynch's perfection of that perfection of that Lynchian dream logic, Inland Empire is almost the deconstruction of that. This is a filmmaker chasing ideas in real time and trusting that they'll connect when they're supposed to. And it really does feel like a circle closing, a return to his roots, to one man, a camera, and the willingness to follow an idea wherever it leads. It really feels like we're coming full circle.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, as far as careers go, he got lucky. Like, I feel like he couldn't have nailed this anymore. And I mean, I know we've still got, you know, The Return to talk about and stuff like that, but man, as far as filmography, it feels like this is the final boss David Lynch moment, you know.
Yeah.
Like, as far as this movies go.
Yeah, it's kind of a culmination of everything. It's a culmination of so many of his themes, while getting back to his roots as like an art house experimental one-man show kind of filmmaker, like he was when he was making The Alphabet.
Right. Also, I feel like it's worth mentioning. I don't know where else we're going to mention it exactly, but Centerman into this movie. That
The Nina Simone song.
Yeah, what a weird whiplash moment that was. Just this existential horror and then fucking dance party.
Yep. I've got a theory as to what it all means that we'll get into, but it's a great scene. It is a very different feel, obviously, than the rest of the film, but I think that is fully intentional. And our buddy Ben Harper shows up in there.
Yeah, how about that?
Who was it? Ben Harper, one of my, he's not really our buddy. I've met him twice, but I don't think he knows that I exist.
I've definitely talked to him. We went to a concert. We did have a conversation, but he very much looked like he had been partaking.
Yes, he had been on the bus for a while. But yeah, Ben Harper's one of my favorite musicians of all time, and he was married to Laura Dern at this time. And he shows up uncredited as the piano player during that Centerman scene at the end. And in fact, the name Inland Empire came from Ben Harper. That's where he grew up, in the Inland Empire neighborhood east of Los Angeles. And David Lynch had never heard this term before, the term Inland Empire. He'd never heard of that area or whatever. So Laura Dern kind of mentioned it to him casually one day, and he just loved that name. And he worked it into the film. I mean, they say it in the film, and it became the name of the film, because I think the working name for this, once Lynch started viewing this as a feature film, they were referring to it as 4-7, which is the name of the cursed Polish film from within the film, 4-7, and also the number of the hotel room that the Polish girl, the lost girl, is trapped in at the end of the movie. I don't know what the significance of the numbers 4-7 are. I'll tell you that much, though.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't have any meaning, like how now kids say 6-7.
I hate it. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
And also has no meaning.
What if he had named it that? And then it would just be like, this is the most relevant movie ever.
All right. Well, Inland Empire premiered on September 6, 2006 at the Venice International Film Festival, where David Lynch received the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, and where audiences got their first look at what would become his most divisive film, or at least one of his most divisive films.
He was 60 at the time. The Venice organizers praising him for his personal and visionary style and the constant search for the limits of cinematography. Constant search for the limits of cinematographic form. Cinematographic form.
It's a hard word.
Yeah, it was a hard word. I struggled with that. He also got the Future Film Festival Digital Award.
I don't know about that one. Is this at a different festival?
Venice Film Festival in 2006. Future Film Festival Digital Award for Inland Empire.
Interesting. I wonder if that was the first year they did something like that. Studio Canal had financed the production of the film, or at least partially. But when it came time to release it, Lynch actually decided to take matters back into his own hands, and he bought back the North American rights and handled distribution himself through his company, which was called Absurda, a company that had been really created to distribute things like DVDs through his website. And he partnered with a company called 518 Media to release the film. And it was a bold move, especially for a 3-hour avant-garde epic shot on standard definition mini DV, which is not exactly an easy sell. So he's doing this without anyone backing him. He's just doing it all himself. And the rollout was slow. A few festival screenings, then a limited US release that September. And then in January of 2007, Lynch hit the road with the film, literally embarking on a 10-city theater tour with composer Marek Zabrowski and a cow. Now, when he was asked about it, Lynch said, "With self-distribution, I'm able to shape the outcome of the film so much more. I'm looking forward to getting out among the people with the cow."
Yeah.
Also, we should mention Marek Zabrowski. I don't think we've mentioned him yet, but Marek Zabrowski was a composer who, he did this tour with him because he was also a supervisor on the film. He did some music for the film, not a score, I think, but a couple of songs of his are in there. But primarily, he actually worked as, I think, a translator on the film between the English speakers and the Polish speakers, and him and Lynch just kind of hit it off, started talking about music, and they're later going to do an album together called Polish Night Music, which is, I've been listening to a lot this week. It's very, very good.
You know, the thing with 518, I'd never heard of four-walling a film, but
it's something they used to do back in like the 50s and stuff when they would self-distribute and travel with the film. Like guys like, William Castle and Roger Corman, they would four-wall films.
Yeah, and it means basically they would rent the theater, so they're paying for the quote four walls.
Four walls, yeah.
Yeah, for a flat fee, and then they keep 100% of whatever revenue it
Mm-hmm.
pulls in, which is feels like a pretty big gamble that like most distributors would never take. But
Yeah.
Lynch has full control on getting this thing out. So the cow doesn't surprise me. Why the cow? No, who knows?
Because it's David Lynch.
Yeah.
Getting back to his Midwest roots, I guess, Now, when asked why he didn't use a traditional distributor, he kept it simple. He said he wanted to stay independent to keep the film, quote, close to the people. Reactions at Venice were deeply divided. Some hailed Inland Empire as a visionary leap into digital cinema. Others dismissed it as incoherent, indulgent, or both. Roger Ebert called it an experience you don't merely watch, it happens to you, which is a pretty great quote, honestly. Sight and Sound's Nick James described it as, quote, a doomed enterprise to review, something you can only evoke rather than summarize. And Manohla Dargis of the New York Times dubbed it a plunge into pure Lynchian abstraction, 3 hours that feel like a descent through the mind of cinema itself. So like all of those are sort of like, you just got to go with the flow on this one. they're kind of all saying that in different ways.
Roger Ebert saying it happens to you is like critic speak for like, I had an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up. I think I got to lay down.
Plenty of other critics simply surrendered, admitting that Inland Empire resisted any single interpretation, which, of course, was probably exactly the point. So if there's one thing that we've learned over the course of this series, I think, it's that David Lynch movies are rarely easy watches. These aren't films that you can half watch while you're folding your laundry. Like they demand your full attention. We've said this multiple times over the course of this series, I think mostly while trying to talk Todd into not dismissing them a little bit, but they demand your full attention. And then they also, I think this is important, they demand your thoughts afterwards. Like they stick with you, that's part of what I think makes them so fun to talk about, because they're wide open to interpretation. And even the so-called quote unquote correct readings never really feel like the final word. Because as we've said so many times throughout the series, we've said it in this episode, sometimes the meaning isn't as important as the feeling with these films. And more than any other film of David Lynch's, I think that's a mindset that you really need to bring into Inland Empire. I think it's safe to say that Inland Empire is Lynch's most experimental and most challenging film. There's no doubt about that. His previous movies might have broken narratives or taken surreal detours, but you can still kind of trace a relatively clear story through something like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. Like if somebody asked me to, I can't explain every element of Mulholland Drive, but I could tell you the plot, right? This one's a little tougher in that aspect. I mean, like Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire was shaped by the circumstances of its creation, because like we talked about in our Mulholland Drive discussion, it could really only exist through the process of first being developed as a television pilot. Otherwise, the version of Mulholland Drive that we got, if it had been written as a movie, wouldn't be the same movie that we got in 2001. Inland Empire could really only exist because of the way that it was filmed, without a full script, scene by scene, image by image, instinct first and logic later, which I think is why it's even more remarkable that the film, once it was shaped into a feature, still manages to encompass so many of Lynch's recurring obsessions. Because you could see that happening if there's like a plan from the beginning, right? But the fact that it was kind of shot piecemeal and he still managed to get all that stuff in there proves just how strong his obsessions are. And when I say obsessions, I mean the things that interest him, the themes that are interesting to him. Now, Gary, this is your first time watching this, right?
Correct.
What was your first impression? Like when you got to the end of the movie or through as you were watching the movie, like what was going through your mind on this one? Because this one's it's not an easy watch. I will fully admit that it's not an easy watch.
There was a mix of things. Some what the fuck? And some like, yeah, okay, there's David Lynch.
Yeah. Well, because you've become a fan of David Lynch. I mean, I'm not that you weren't a fan before, but you had only seen a couple of his movies before, and I feel like over the course of these 2 David Lynch series that we've done, I would say you're a David Lynch fan at this point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that I've become a bigger fan of him just in general, as a person, as an artist, and just being able to appreciate him and his films a lot more. I will say that this one I feel like is his toughest. This is for hardcores only.
Yeah.
This is not what you would. I think we kind of joked around about this already, but this is not the one you give to somebody where they're like, "I need to."
Hey,
know
I
more
want to get
about
into David Lynch. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not it, and that's, and I don't even necessarily mean that as like a knock on the movie. It's just that this is David Lynch at his surrealist, and so
Yeah, and I
you
think
just
I
don't
think
start here.
you have an advantage, when we're doing something like we're doing with this podcast, where we've been not only watching all of his movies, most of them, we watch more than once over the course of preparing the episode, but also digging into not only the story behind the making of the film, but we read a lot of like film theory, a lot of people's like essays and books and things like that about what people say about his films. And it's helped us sort of unlock an understanding of his movies that the layperson's not going to necessarily have if they don't put that kind of, unless they're listening to the show, I guess, and hearing us jabber on about it, but I think having those sort of recurring themes and the things we know about Lynch's personal life and his journey with transcendental meditation and things like that, all of that combines into a different understanding of even this film than you might have if you were just like thrown into this, or maybe you've seen a couple David Lynch movies. Like maybe you saw Twin Peaks a long time ago and you wanted to see his last movie. And like, I feel like you're going to be really very incredibly confused, because even us, as deep into David Lynch as we've gotten over the course of doing this podcast, I think we both still had a hard time with this, and not necessarily in enjoying it, because I very much like the process of watching this movie. This movie fascinates me. Over the 3 hour, yes, it's 3 hours long. It is long, but I never find myself bored by it, because I'm so fascinated by what's going on screen. Even if I don't know what's going on, like it's interesting to me. But when it came time to like jot down my thoughts and try to think about what it all means and what David Lynch is trying to convey here, I had a much harder time like putting all that together than any other movie that we've covered of David Lynch's. If you're going to talk about the plot of this, like, I mean, ostensibly it's about an actress whose new role makes her lose her grip on reality, who she starts to question what parts of herself belong to her and what parts belong to the woman she's pretending to be, the character that she's portraying. And the lines blur until there's nothing left to separate them. And as the audience, and I think this is a big part of what throws people off on this, other than the visuals, as the audience, we're pulled into that confusion and we're caught in that space between performance and reality. We never, a lot of times we don't know which version of Laura Dern we're watching at any given moment. Okay, so like in the other films in this LA trilogy, this David Lynch LA trilogy, this blurring of identity is kind of a theme that runs through all of them, through Lost Highway, through Mulholland Drive. In Lost Highway, Fred and Pete, they might be two people or they might be two halves of the same psyche. In Mulholland Drive, Betty is Diane's fantasy, this character that she's created in her mind, sort of her escape hatch from guilt and heartbreak. A performance that we see a little bit, in that audition scene in Mulholland Drive. We see this performance that she gives, that Betty, quote unquote, Betty gives. It's almost like Diane breaking through, like this performance that feels more grounded and real than all of everything else in the movie around her. And Nikki's performance, Laura Dern's character, Nikki, her performance as Sue doesn't just blur that line that we saw in Mulholland Drive, that line between actor and character. It completely erases it. And then structurally, Inland Empire goes a step further than those movies. And this is another thing that makes it more difficult, I think, because there's no clean break between realities like there is in Mulholland Drive. Like in Mulholland Drive, there's a moment, and same with Lost Highway, there's a moment when when it switches from one type of movie to another. Here, instead, the film, instead of there being like that break, that split, it like fractures. It goes into all different directions. It's a web of overlapping worlds, each one kind of bleeding into the next, and you're disoriented. You never quite know where you are. And when Lynch toured with the movie on that like 10-city tour that we talked about, a lot of times he would open up screenings with a quote from, you might be more familiar with this because you read more on this stuff than I do, Gary, but the Upanishads or the Upanishads, it's one of the ancient Hindu texts that inspired transcendental meditation. In this quote that Lynch would open these screenings with, he would say, "We are like the spider. We weave our life and then move along in it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives in the dream." That's another one of those Lynchian Rosetta Stones, it feels like, right? It sort of feels like the key to unlocking this film and maybe all of Lynch's work. Like, we create the worlds that we live in. Nikki's descent into Sue isn't just psychological; it's a creative descent. It's not unlike what Diane does in Mulholland Drive, or what Fred does in Lost Highway, creating their own reality. Lynch also made Inland Empire the same way. That's what we've been talking about in this episode. He made this movie intuitively, one idea leading into another, creating this whole world, a filmmaker weaving his own web as he walks through it. And as I was, and I think I even texted you about this. I was like, Gary, I have gone down a rabbit hole thinking about how because once I read that quote and realized that he was presenting this film to audiences by giving them that quote before the movie started, I'm like, well, he's doing that for a reason. He's doing that because that quote ties into the movie. That quote also ties into transcendental meditation, which means transcendental meditation very much ties into the movie. So I went down this rabbit hole of like, how is this all connected? And I even told you when I texted you, I was like, I don't really understand all of it because I don't fully understand transcendental meditation. I understand it on a very, very base surface level based on stuff that I've read during the series. But I am far from like an expert on it by any means. But it's clear that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the guy who created transcendental meditation, his teachings on TM deeply shaped Lynch's worldview. It's very clear that that's a big part of this movie. So as I started digging into it, I also found another quote. It's from that interview that you quoted earlier. And in that, he starts talking about this other quote from the Maharishi about the marketplace and the palace. Did you come across that?
I don't think I saw that. No.
It stuck in my mind because it actually is. It's referenced in the film. It's not quoted in the film, but it's referenced in the film. So basically, Maharishi described consciousness as having two realms: the marketplace and the palace. The marketplace is sort of the surface of life, the noise, the chaos, the endless cycle of thoughts and desires, where it's really easy to lose yourself, getting lost in the marketplace. The palace is the still, silent field of pure awareness underneath it all. That's that unified field that you were talking about, right? So at the beginning of the film, when Grace Zabriskie's visitor, when she comes in to warn Nikki, she tells her this story about this little girl lost in the marketplace. She's telling Nikki, essentially, she's almost playing prophet in that scene. Like, she feels like a similar character to the log lady. She made me think of the log lady, like this person who comes in and sort of like guiding you in a way. But she warns that Nikki's about to go through the marketplace and that there are many chances to get lost. That's what she says during that weird monologue at the beginning. And at the beginning of the movie, if you see this movie just one time, you don't know what the hell she's talking about. Once you rewatch it, it gels together a little bit more. It's basically the film laying out its entire sort of metaphysical map. Nikki, and maybe all of us, are trying to find our way out of that marketplace, out of that noise, and into the palace, which for Lynch is transcending. I told you I went down a rabbit hole on this shit.
You did go down a rabbit hole. It's blowing my mind here.
So another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think it does kind of play into this a little bit, is you mentioned that Axon N earlier. The series for the website that never really got made, that Lynch works into here. You said you mentioned it's the first thing we see and hear in the film, and we see it scrawled over doorways throughout the film as well. And they're sort of like, those doorways seem to be like portals into other maybe layers of reality. What's your interpretation or thought? What is Axon N? Like, what the hell is it? It's a radio play, but what does it mean in the fabric of this movie?
Why would you ask me that? Like, I'm gonna know.
What do you think? I guess it's like, do you have any idea?
I was trying to think about this a little bit. I feel like that's the $1 million question.
Well, like the silk and the watch that we talked about earlier, it feels like one of those things that the film's trying to tell you, is trying to give you a key to something.
Yeah, it keeps saying, like, I think on the website on the original film, it's like it says it's like the longest running radio play in history or something like that. And then the characters, like the Polish ones, I know they say somebody says something at one point about the Axon N district.
Interesting.
So, it almost like it's a bad neighborhood or something. But that I kind of joked about purgatory earlier, but it almost feels like I don't know. It feels like it has something to do with like this curse, definitely, like or whatever's passed along that's happening over and over again, like it's the signal for it or something.
Well, it is a record, even though they call it it's the longest running radio play. It's a record which is constantly spinning, and also it being a longest running or never ending radio play, it does sort of indicate that cycle, like you're saying, right? That cycle of the curse or the trauma, whatever it is.
Like it feels like it's the story. I think that's what I was where you're saying. I
Yeah.
feel like accident is what this story is called or something like that.
What the story that's being told within Inland Empire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The story that's repeating over and over again.
Yeah.
Like it feels like that's the name of it, maybe.
Yeah, because it's like it sort of clues you into, especially it being the first thing that we see and the first sound that we hear of the record turning. It sort of tunes you into the fact that we're not watching a linear film. We're tuning into an eternal broadcast, something that goes on forever. A signal that keeps looping through space and time.
Yeah.
And so the record becomes this sort of metronome for these shifting realities throughout the film. Because one thing I noticed when I rewatched it yesterday that I didn't notice the previous time I watched it, when I watched it last week or whenever I watched it years ago, is that you can actually, in some of the scenes that are set like in Poland with Polish characters, you can hear the record in the background. Like you can hear it in the sound design. Like Lynch put the sound of that record turning, that needle across the record. You can hear it in the background. So it's like, it made me think that those scenes they're part of that broadcast. Those scenes are part of that broadcast, part of what's happening there. But it's sort of a reminder that all of these stories that we're seeing throughout this film are sort of, like you said, they're all spinning on that disc, on that same record. Every reality, every identity is sort of like another groove in the record, I guess.
Well, and I was going to say, and that makes it almost perfect that it's a record.
Yeah.
So it's just like this circular thing. Like
and it's layers and it's layers, you know, which this, I've said it multiple times. This movie is layers upon layers because that's what this movie is. In a way, it's sort of a descent through layers of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like Lynch's go into those deeper waters of consciousness to find the big ideas, right?
Damn it, Lynch.
Like each reality that we see in this has it's a different vibration of the same awareness. Like I said, a different groove in the record, I guess. And Lynch does structure the film that way. He structures the film like meditation works, right? Diving deeper and deeper through illusions and thoughts, searching for that still point underneath the palace. But where transcendental meditation moves towards like silence, the movie it's all noise, right? It's all trauma and memory and performance, like a record that won't stop spinning. It's all the bullshit you have to get through to get to that transcendence, essentially, right? It's that chaos, the marketplace, what Maharishi called the marketplace, that you have to like wade your way through to get to the palace. And like as I started digging into this stuff, I'm like, shit, like David Lynch literally seems to have made a movie about transcendental meditation without ever mentioning transcendental meditation or anything remotely like that, just by the way he structures it.
Yeah, that's pretty great. It's a good place to mention another theory about this.
Yeah.
So I was on Reddit, and on the Twin Peaks subreddit, this came up, and it was actually, I mean, it was a post from like 8 years ago, but this guy, this person, to give them credit, was like their username was like NYG500, and they give like an analysis, and then they gave like somebody asked a question and they went even deeper, and I was trying to read through this and read it. So I'm going to try to summarize it really quick, but I thought this was kind of cool, and I wish I could take credit for it, but I won't do it. But also sort of spoilers for Twin Peaks if you haven't seen that
for
this
original series, I guess, because this was written before.
Yeah, I guess for the original series, as far as I know, there's nothing in here about the return. Nothing obvious, at least. But basically, I tried to break this down. But so part one would be like the big idea, like what it means. So first it says that Inland Empire is a lot like Twin Peaks. It's a war between good and bad spirits, basically. It says in Twin Peaks, you have like good spirits, like the Giant, for instance, and they are more helpful to like Agent Cooper and dealing with bad spirits like Bob.
Okay.
And in Inland Empire, the good spirits are the rabbits and the quote unquote whores. And they're helping Laura Dern's character, Nikki, fight a bad spirit, which is the Phantom. But the real genius of this whole theory, like, is supposed to be that it's like the superpower. It's about the superpower of acting.
Yeah.
So you think about an actor who gets so deep into a role that it's genuinely scary, like Cheryl Lee playing Laura Palmer. And what we talked about in that Firewall With Me episode, that like people were worried about her even coming back. She was so raw and real. But her willing to go there was so raw that it provided like genuine catharsis for real life victims of abuse.
Yeah.
And it made them feel seen. So this theory says basically like Inland Empire is the supernatural version of that. Like Nikki Grace, Laura Dern, is the actor, and she suffers and she loses her mind. She gets destroyed by the curse of the role. The Lost Girl, the one crying in the hotel room, is the audience, and she's a proxy for all of us trapped in our own dark room or trauma, just watching. And by going through all that suffering, Nikki's performance is like a ritual that frees the audience or the Lost Girl from her prison. It's a movie about how like a great performance could save someone. So like part 2 of it was like basically, if that's the theme, how it works out in the literal plot is, so they spelled all this out. It's like a long time ago in Poland, there's this cursed folktale, and the Phantom is the evil spirit that's attached to it. And the Lost Girl was a real woman with a tragic life, cheating husband, lost husband, murdered, gets trapped by the curse. And when she dies, the Phantom locks her soul in that hotel room or purgatory and forces her to watch the curse play out over and over again. And then step 2 is the remake. In modern day LA, they decide to remake the cursed film. Laura Dern's character, Nikki, gets the lead role, but it's a trap. And step 3 is the infection. As Nikki starts acting, the curse infects her. Her real life and the movie start to blur together, and she literally becomes Sue and is forced to relive the exact same tragedy that the Lost Girl went through. All while the real Lost Girl is forced to watch it happen on TV. So in step 4, all the good spirits, the rabbits, the neighbor, the whores, they're giving Nikki clues to help her wake up inside the curse. And when she's finally killed on the Hollywood sidewalk, her spirit awakens, understands the mission, finds the magic gun, and kills the Phantom. And by doing that, she breaks the curse, not just for herself, but for the Lost Girl, and that frees the Lost Girl from the room. So in the end, her performance literally becomes like a rescue mission for the people trapped by this curse.
Yeah.
And it's like an actor's journey that saves people that are dealing with similar trauma, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good theory. And that plays into somewhat some of my own reading of the film as well. Not just this transcendental meditation stuff, but what the actual, like, the plot of the film is trying to convey. Because that's a pretty hopeful ending, right?
Yeah.
For a movie that's pretty dark. And I think there's an emotional distinction between this and, say, Mulholland Drive that makes Inland Empire feel a bit unique and somewhat hopeful among, compared to other David Lynch movies, except maybe Fire Walk with Me, which has a similar hopeful, dark but hopeful ending. So in Mulholland Drive, Diane Selwyn, she uses this fantasy of Betty to escape her pain, and it ultimately destroys her. But in Inland Empire, Nikki is using her performance, like you said, to transcend her own pain. It's not escapism, it's transformation. It's acting as a sort of spiritual alchemy, a way to channel trauma into creation. I think a large part of this movie is about the act of creation as a way to transcend in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which it makes sense coming from David Lynch, who for whom the art life is everything, right?
Yeah, it sounds exactly like something he would do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Lost Girl is, I think that's kind of where she comes in, because she's the one constant thread that ties all of these fractured worlds of the film together. She's the watcher, the dreamer, and maybe, you know, the tagline for this film, even if you have the Criterion Blu-ray, what's right there on the cover, it says "A Woman in Trouble." The Lost Girl, a lot of people assume that it's talking about Laura Dern, but I think it's probably talking about the Lost Girl. She's the true woman in trouble of the film. And there are some readings of the film, and the one that you're talking about sort of leans into this a little bit as well, in a way, partially at least. But there are some readings of the film that suggest that everything we see happening inside, happening in the film, are inside of her head, the mind or the psyche of the Lost Girl, and that everything, the rabbits, the film set, even Nikki and Sue, are all manifestations of her trauma. Now that's where this differs a little bit. This is another theory I've read that differs a little bit from what you're saying, because what you're saying, Nikki is a real person, the Lost Girl is another real person. This one is saying that Nikki is actually a manifestation of everything that she's going through, right?
Right.
Nikki and Sue are manifestations of this trauma that does replay and reshapes itself on an endless loop, like what she's watching on TV, like what you were saying. Like she's trapped inside of her pain, watching it like a TV show that she can't turn off. And through the act of watching it, she is slowly rewriting it as well, rewriting her own trauma. The next thing I was going to ask you about was the Phantom, but I think that theory, do you buy into that? Like he is sort of like the evil force, the curse of the film?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like it's like the dark thing that's like holding you there or something.
Right. Like he's that force that's keeping her trapped in that room, whether it's purgatory or whatever you want to call it. He's the abuser, the manipulator, the darkness that keeps the story cycling, that record spinning, right? He's part of this long line of Lynchian figures who sort of personify evil. You know, Bob in Twin Peaks, I think that theory mentioned Bob. Or the Mystery Man in Lost Highway, or maybe the thing behind the dumpster in Mulholland Drive. You know, there are a bunch of examples that you could give. He isn't just a villain. He's just like a typical bad guy. He's a manifestation of corruption and control. Like he's corruption and control and abuse personified, essentially. The thing that invades the soul and rewrites it. He's the one who hypnotizes the Julia Ormond character. Hypnotizes, that's the word they use in the film, but he is whatever force causes her to, who drives her to violence, because she's the one who ends up stabbing and killing Sue or Nikki or Laura Dern. Whichever one she is. She's both of them technically at that point, I guess. But, you know, he's that same malevolent sort of impulse that's been replaying for generations of women in trouble, which has been what David Lynch's most of his career has been about, women in trouble. And when Nikki finally confronts and kills him with the magic gun or whatever you want to call it, it's not just like, she's not doing that in self-defense. That's an act of liberation. That's an act of liberation for herself and for the Lost Girl and for every woman who's ever been trapped or silenced or defined by somebody else's violence. As we watch all of these David Lynch movies, you start to see how much empathy he has towards women, it feels like. It's something we talked about a lot during our Fire Walk With Me episode, but it comes up again in Mulholland Drive and again here. And this feels like almost like the culmination of all of those. Like it's almost like they've been building to this moment where Nikki, Laura Dern frees all of them, right? And Lynch's language, that moment where she shoots him in the face and that whole crazy face thing happens where we see, I guess, his true face. It's all fucked up. It's all weird. Like that's not just like a narrative closure. That is the moment where Transcendence begins. The marketplace collapses, and for the first time, someone actually makes it to the palace that's mentioned in the very first scene of the movie. You've got Nikki and the Lost Girl, and maybe even the audience. They finally reach that quiet center that's been pulsing beneath all of this insanity, all of this evil, all this chaos and noise, and they've achieved transcendence. And I think that's what I really do. As this is all stuff that just came to me like in the last couple of days as I've been reading more about it. I really think that's what Lynch may have been working towards with this. And I think that's what makes Inland Empire feel different from a lot of even other David Lynch films, because after 2 decades of stories about women being consumed by trauma, this one ends with a bit of release. You kind of got that in Firewalk with Me. I mean, Laura had to die, but she did get embraced by the angels at the end. So there is that hopefulness in that. And that's sort of feels like what's happening at the end of this movie when Nikki hugs and kisses the lost girl, and she embraces her. It feels very similar to Laura being embraced by the angels. And the movie ends. The record finally stops spinning. That cycle is broken. And when the broadcast ends, it's no longer in darkness, but in light. And that's when you get that insane closing musical sequence. And it feels very out of place in such a dark movie, like you said earlier, right? But it's really this euphoric curtain call that gathers all of the film's ghosts for one last dance. And even people from other David Lynch projects and even other random people. Like, it's sort of tying them all together, right? Because it's bringing in Laura Haring. It's bringing in the Rabbits. It's bringing in the girl from Pomona that gets mentioned. It's bringing in Natasha Kinski for some reason. I don't know. Ben Harper's the piano. And so it's all these people from across not only David Lynch's cinematic universe, but like just sort of the industry and movies and everything in general, right? They're all dancing and swaying and celebrating as Nina Simone sings that song. And it's sort of this, it's not like a literal ending. It's not like Laura Dern's character walked into a room and all these characters were literally there. It is sort of a metaphysical ending. It's every identity that's been kind of fractured throughout the film rejoined here in a moment of joy, in a moment of release, where performance becomes communion, and the creation from Nikki becomes like freedom for all of them, which also ties into the theory that you were quoting.
Well, I'm glad somebody got it.
I mean, but do you feel like it is sort of Lynch tying into that same theory or that same obsession with women in trouble and women, being liberated from that trouble that he's sort of been touching on, especially over the last few films?
Yeah, what's weird about him is that it feels like every time you watch a new one of his movies, you almost feel like everyone's like a trial run for the next thing. Like he's just continuously like
he's building on what he's done before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's getting somewhere. Like he's ascending now. Like he's and so that's why it's even more interesting to hear you talk about it with mixing with like transcendental meditation. It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like it's that's the ultimate, like where he would be trying to get to.
Right. And he's sort of like portraying that here because these women are reaching that moment of transcendence, right? By breaking through their trauma. And he's almost saying like through transcendental meditation, you too can achieve this. But he's doing that without preaching to you. The movie doesn't ever mention transcendental meditation. He's not preaching to you, but he's using the things that he's learned through his practice and reframing them through the plot of the movie, which is such a like fascinating. I don't know how his brain works. I do not understand how he puts all these things together, or if he even understands it, or if it is some sort of like enlightened thing. Like it's insane to me that he's able to do that.
It's definitely the eerie part, right? That he's, because he keeps saying it and makes no bones about it, that he's just like letting these things flow to him and getting them out there. And if that's what it actually made, is like this movie that is a perfect example of that process or something, that it's just like, wow, that's okay. Fucking enlightened bastard. Like you.
Yeah. And I don't know if he knew that this was going to be his last movie at the time, or maybe he thought it was going to be his last movie at the time he was making it. I'm not sure, because obviously he went on to work after this, and I don't know if he tried to make more movies. I know he tried to make more TV shows, but it does sort of feel in a way like Lynch's final act of grace towards all of these women who have suffered throughout his stories, your Laura Palmers, your Dorothy Valens, your Diane Selwyn's, all of them. I go back to Fire Walk with Me, Laura Palmer, another woman in trouble. She's finally released from torment from Bob, from that same evil force that the Phantom represents, as she's embraced by angels. And that moment always felt like Lynch's act of an act of contrition, like an acknowledgement that behind every nightmare that he's conjured, there's real pain and a longing for deliverance. And I think Inland Empire feels sort of like an echo of that moment at the end when Nikki and the Lost Girl embrace, because that's when the Lost Girl is freed and she smiles and she's reunited with her family at the very end. That's Laura Palmer's transcendence replayed through another character. Like, the difference is that this time Lynch doesn't need angels to descend. He's saying that the act of creation itself is enough, that art itself becomes redemption.
That's it. That's the end of the episode. I will say that, just to, you mentioned he does go on to work. I saw in multiple places where people were like, going back to what we said about him just building on things, that there were some critics that I saw that were saying like they consider Inland Empire to be like the Rosetta Stone for understanding Twin Peaks: The Return, and that it's like he was still building, like going there, that like that basically the Return's not just a sequel to Twin Peaks, it's a bigger budget version of Inland Empire. So that'll be something to look for as we
watch our way through that. Yeah, interesting. So financially, this movie was never going to be like a hit. It's it's a 3-hour long fucking nightmare that nobody that we have tried to explain over the course of these episodes, and we've done our best. I think who knows, maybe somebody's listening to this going, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Because it's that kind of movie.
They think we've lost our minds.
But it ended up earning about $4 million worldwide, which is honestly kind of respectable for a 3-hour art film, but ultimately irrelevant to its creator. Lynch doesn't care about money. And success for him has never been measured in box office receipts. It was in freedom. That's where success is for him. He had made and released a feature completely outside of the studio system, entirely on his own terms. And even his Oscar campaign, I'm sure you've seen this, but his Oscar campaign, grassroots Oscar campaign, we'll say, for Laura Dern was very, like, purely David Lynch. He parked himself on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea, sitting in a director's chair beside a live cow. I don't know if it's the same cow that he went on tour with. I could not find that information. But he's sitting there with a live cow on the side of the road with a banner that says, "For your consideration," and has a picture of Laura Dern on it. Plus a second banner that said, "Without cheese, there wouldn't be an Inland Empire." And when he was asked about the cheese, Lynch simply replied, "I ate a lot of cheese during the making of Inland Empire." So, fair enough.
Yeah. Right. I wonder, like, he had to have security, right? Because you see all these scenes or the pictures from it, and it always looks like he's just like hanging out.
He's just hanging out on the side of the road, smoking cigarette after cigarette.
But like, could you really just get out of your car, go walk over and be like, "Hey, Dave"?
I don't know, man. It's Hollywood. Maybe they're just like used to it. Like, this is something we see every day. Oh, David's back again with the cow. He's got the cow this time.
So weird.
Well, over time, Inland Empire has pulled off one of the great critical reversals in Lynch's career, transforming from one of his most divisive films into one of his most revered. Many of the same critics who once called it impenetrable started revisiting it as digital cinema evolved, realizing just how far ahead of the curve it really was. And what once looked like a technical mess now reads as intentional. People realized that he was doing this on purpose. He's a filmmaker using lo-fi digital tools to explore fractured identity, paranoia, and the limits of perception itself. In 2022, Lynch personally supervised a 4K restoration from the original mini DV footage released theatrically by Janus Films. And it's a really fascinating process. Have you read about the restoration process that they did? Janus is, they're tied in with the Criterion Collection and all that. but they basically like downgraded it from what they had done on the DVD back to the original SD, and then upgraded that. And they used some kind of AI algorithm to help out with the upgrade and everything.
It was called like Gigapixel AI or something.
Yeah, and it was something. It brought the movie back to what David Lynch said was closer to what he wanted it to look like when it was in theaters. And he said when it went to DVD, like it kind of like the picture got darker than it was supposed to be, and he wasn't ever really happy with the way the DVD looked. So this looks closer to like what he always intended it to look like, which doesn't clean it up. It still looks very, very digital video, very like lo-fi, but it's intentional, you know. And if you get the Blu-ray from Criterion, that's the version you're getting.
It's unconventional because like you can't, you know, usually if you're restoring something or doing something with this, you take like the negative and
there's no negative.
But there's no negative. So you have to take the like standard def, like mini DV things and use the AI to like upscale it. And I think, and I think you kind of said this, but like, you know, they had to downscale, then feed that clean SD into the AI to upscale to 4K, which is so weird to think about. Like
it's a strange process, but David Lynch supervised it, so it all got his seal of approval. That upgrade preserved the film's haunted, smeary texture while letting audiences see details that had been lost in the murk on the DVDs. And for many, because a lot of people didn't get a chance to see this in theaters, I certainly didn't. The DVD that came out was the first time that I ever saw it. So for a lot of people, this new restoration was the first time Inland Empire could truly be appreciated, not as just an odd digital experiment, this kind of weirdo thing that David Lynch did towards the end of his career, but as a fully realized descent into the uncanny. And I wouldn't quite call it his magnum opus, but it is certainly a culmination. Like you said, it's built on everything that he's done before this.
Can you imagine being the tech guy on that though? Like, oh, Mr. Lynch, the AI has removed all of the digital noise on this thing, and he's
God
like,
damn it,
great. Or he's just like, that's great, put it back.
Yeah. And today the film stands as both an ending and a beginning. It is Lynch's final feature film and the first major statement of his digital period. The connective tissue between Mulholland Drive and his web projects, and eventually Twin Peaks: The Return, which is shot fully digitally. Now, it is a much more clean, much more high definition digital, but he did shoot all of Twin Peaks: The Return in digital, and any of his like short films he did after this, all digital. When he said he was never going back to film, he meant it. He never went back to film after that. It's a film that remains resistant to easy interpretation. I think we have proven that here by ranting about it being about transcendental meditation and it being about art as a creative process and it being about trauma and it being like we've gone through the gamut and we haven't even scratched the surface probably. It is definitely very hard to interpret. It's part horror film, part dream, part seance. Like it feels... I've seen this movie, I think 4 times now. I've watched it twice in the last couple of weeks. It'd been 2007, I think, it was whenever the DVD came out. I watched it a couple times back then, but since then this is the first time I've revisited it, but I feel like I get more out of it. It feels more alive with every passing year, every time that I watch it. Even watching it twice in 2 weeks, I got more on the second watch than on the first watch, because there were things that were in the film early on, like the Grace Zabriskie scene, that I was like, oh, that's weird, that when I got to the end, I was like, oh, that meant something, you know?
Yeah.
But in its own strange way, Inland Empire might be the clearest expression of what David Lynch has been chasing since Eraserhead, which is proof that cinema can still take you somewhere that you've never been before. Inland Empire was David Lynch's final feature, the culmination of everything that he had spent a lifetime exploring. Dream logic, dual identity, the dark undercurrents of everyday life, all of it colliding in one last burst of pure, unfiltered expression. And we've been talking about David Lynch on this show on and off since I think it was early 2024. So it's hard to overstate how much time we've spent wandering through his strange, beautiful worlds, from the industrial nightmares of Eraserhead to the suburban rot of Blue Velvet, from the cosmic sorrow of Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me to the luminous heartbreak of The Straight Story and Mulholland Drive.
I honestly don't know what I'm going to do if I'm not a person that talks about David Lynch.
Well, we've still got Twin Peaks: The Return to do, so
Okay.
you'll still be that person for a while.
All right.
And you know what? It makes for great party conversation. Next time you're at a party, just start explaining to people how Inland Empire is truly a metaphor for reaching transcendence through the art of creation. You're going to make so many friends at those parties.
Or if you don't like talking to people, then that's
That's a
that's
good
the
way
way
to
to go.
That's a good way to get rid of them. So while not every one of Lynch's films lands for everyone, his legacy is undeniable. Few filmmakers have redefined the way that cinema can feel the way that Lynch has. Now, after Inland Empire, Lynch did not disappear. He just kind of shifted mediums a bit. He's always following his inspiration wherever it goes, and it doesn't always take him to film. He continued to paint, of course. He released albums of experimental music, Crazy Clown Time, The Big Dream. They're both really fun albums. He collaborated with Sparkle Horse. He collaborated with Christabel, who we mentioned earlier, Leaky Lee, and even Duran Duran. He published a memoir called Room to Dream, one of our sources on this series, part autobiography, part oral history. It's fantastic. Highly recommend reading it if you get a chance.
I always say the audiobook too for like that and Catching the Big Fish, like where you can hear it in his own
Hear him.
voice.
Yeah. It's really, really good stuff.
Because he's got a great voice.
He does. Yeah. He continued to paint. He continued to create sculptures. He built lamps. He built furniture. He continued to explore ideas the only way that he knew how, by following intuition wherever it led. And then, of course, came Twin Peaks: The Return in 2017. 18 hours of television that somehow managed to be even more audacious, confounding, and moving than anyone expected. It wasn't just a revival. It wasn't just a sequel. It was a reinvention of the television series that made him a household name. And that series proved that even after decades away, Lynch was still way ahead of everyone else, still chasing the big fish. And when David Lynch passed away in January of 2025, tributes poured in from every corner of the world. I've never seen the amount of tributes for a director who's passed away the way that I've seen for David Lynch since he passed away earlier this year. From filmmakers, musicians, artists, from fans whose imaginations he had permanently rewired. It wasn't just that he made great movies, it's that he made transformative ones, films that changed how people saw the world, even if they couldn't quite say why. So as we close this chapter of this series that we've called David Lynch Between Two Worlds, we hope that it serves as our own small tribute to that legacy. We're pretty small fish in a big pond as far as that goes, but this is our contribution to his legacy as best that we can. It's a reminder that cinema doesn't have to make sense to matter, that art can be confusing, terrifying, funny, spiritual, and profound all at once. And that sometimes the meaning isn't the point, that the feeling is. And maybe that's the best way to end this whole thing, with a feeling. The same feeling that Lynch himself seemed to chase through every frame that he ever made. That thrill of mystery, that hum of electricity, that sense that somewhere behind the curtain, something wonderful and strange is still waiting to be discovered.
I think you wrapped up the main point there at the end. That's the biggest thing I learned through this whole thing, I think, or that can be possible, or just I think the way to read Lynch, or the way I learned to appreciate him, that it's just like sometimes the meaning matters less than the way it makes you feel about something.
And I think that not only learning to watch David Lynch movies that way, but learning that is a way that you're allowed to experience art in general, movies, paintings, music, whatever. I think that can unlock a way of experiencing other filmmakers' filmographies, other works of art, music, books, whatever. Like not everything has to be seen the same way. And I think that if you can learn to watch David Lynch movies that way, then you can learn to experience all forms of creativity that way.
Well, I mean, we were talking about, John Carpenter, we were talking about like movies that, you said you'd been going to bed to it, The Fog,
Mhm.
and I was talking about how if we, like anything with Carpenter and that son of a bitch, Dean Cundey together, it's just like, you could just throw them on it, just story or anything else aside. Like there's like a feeling that it brings out of you, and that something warm and cozy that it reminds me of. So maybe like, I guess, be more aware of that it's not even just that this is a good movie or whatever. It's just like, this makes me feel something. And that's as important as anything.
Exactly. And it doesn't always have to be like a happy feeling. It doesn't always have to be a cozy, fuzzy feeling. All feelings are valid, and I get if you don't always want to watch a movie that's going to make you feel like that's going to make you bummed out or whatever. But sometimes you do. Sometimes that makes you feel better. Sometimes watching a sad movie makes you feel better. Sometimes listening to sad music makes you feel better. It's a form of catharsis.
That's why I watch that French movie Martyrs all the time. Just like it just makes me really just
makes you really
appreciate
happy.
life.
Yeah.
It just makes me go like, you know what? I got it all right.
Things could be worse. Well, that's it for this series on David Lynch. We're not done with David Lynch here.
No, we still got a long way to go.
We've got 18 hours of The Return to watch. And we will be beginning that soon. It'll probably be a little while before we start releasing those episodes, but sometime in early 2026, we hope that we will bring back Fire Shock with Me, exclusive to our subscribers over on Cinema Shock Plus. That's our Twin Peaks watch along series. If you haven't listened to it yet, you got time to catch up and watch through Twin Peaks seasons 1 and 2 with us. And then we're going to be back for The Return in a few weeks. And I'm excited to rewatch it because I have not rewatched it since 2017 when it aired. I have never revisited it. And B, I think I'm going to have an even deeper understanding of it and appreciation for it after going through all of this other David Lynch stuff. And C, I'm excited to see Gary's reaction to it. So, because you've never seen it
too. Yeah. I'm excited to just go back to Twin Peaks. So like I just I've honestly missed it that I don't have that to watch anymore. Because I think overall, if I had to pick like a favorite David Lynch thing, I mean, I'm probably gonna lean Twin Peaks. Like I'm probably just gonna be like that.
It's the cozy.
Well, I think it's one. I was about to say it's that cozy feeling I was just talking about. It's just like it's nice. Like I just like being in that world of Twin Peaks. So,
right.
That's fun. And now, even after this movie, like seeing with Inland Empire that, like I said, that some folks say that it's great to have seen Inland Empire and then see The Return. Like it's building on more themes there too. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, I'm excited to see how that plays as well. Just personally, I'm going to be watching it with that in mind. If you want to join us for Fire Shock with Me or any of the other stuff that we have, all those fun bonus segments and extended episodes, and if you just like what we do here and you want to support us, head to cinemashock.net/plus, join Cinema Shock Plus. Members get early access and extended episodes full of all kinds of special features, all kinds of extra segments, further viewing. Somebody Needs a Nap, where Gary reads a bunch of bullshit bullshit reviews off of the internet. And I don't know, it's a good time over on Cinema Shock Plus, I think. I
think we had some good ones for Inland Empire.
Yeah, people did not like it.
Imagine.
Or do you mean the further viewing? We have some really good ones for further viewing.
Yeah, that's what I meant was further viewing.
I think we knocked it out of the park on this one. So if you want to know what they are, though, you're going to have to head over to Cinema Shock Plus, and you can join us on Discord. You can get merch discounts. We've got some new stuff in the works for Cinema Shock Plus, which we will announce shortly. Got a couple of new features that we're working on. So just adding more value to what you get over there at Cinema Shock Plus. We're not raising the prices. We're just adding more value to what you're already paying for. So head over there, and it's fun. It's like the Red Room, but with better Wi-Fi over there. That's probably not a good selling point.
It's a weird way of describing it, but sure.
Well, you ready to talk about next time on Cinema Shock, Gary? What we're doing next? Our big year-end extravaganza.
Yeah, well, we're going to kick 2026 off with a big new series, but before we get there, it's the holidays. It's the holiday season. We got to have a little fun first.
Yeah. So we next time on Cinema Shock Plus, Todd will be back, we think. We think Todd's going to be back, and we're going to be doing something really special because it has been a couple of years since we had a Cinema Shock Christmas episode. I think it was Silent Night, Deadly Night, right? When we watched through that 1 and 2, and then when we did a bonus episode on the rest of the series, watched through the whole series of Silent Night, Deadly Night. Yeah. So for our next episode, which will be the final regular episode of 2026, we'll be taking a look at the Christmas classic that we've been wanting to cover for quite some time, and that is Bob Clark's 1974 Christmas horror, Black Christmas. I'm pretty stoked for it.
I'm pretty stoked too. And honestly, we've kind of kicked around the idea of maybe talking about all the Black Christmases.
Yeah. Yeah, we might talk about the remakes. We might put those remake talks on Cinema Shock Plus. We'll see. I don't think we've fully decided yet, but just another reason to join
maybe I
us over
should have
there.
shut up.
Well, I mean, that's still a good selling point, so we'll figure it out. We'll announce it. We'll tell you on the next episode what we're going to do. But that's it, guys. Anything else you want to add, Gary?
I don't think so. Thanks for sticking with us on this journey through David Lynch. If you made it all the way through, I hope you developed an appreciation just like I did. And if you hate it, well, it's over. So
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, where can you be found on the internet for all of our listeners, Gary?
I am at This Is Gary Horne on all the things.
And I am at Justin_Bishop. You can find the show at cinemashock.net. On the website, you can find links to our Discord, to our merch, to Cinema Shock Plus, to all of our episodes, of course, all of our social media. You can also follow us on most of the things at cinema_shock. As always, rate, review, all that stuff on Apple and Spotify. Leave comments on Spotify. That's a fun thing that we always get a kick out of seeing. And most importantly, share this with your friends. If you have somebody who's into the kind of movies we talk about, who's into David Lynch, send them this episode, send them this series. Let them know that, hey, we've got a show for Lynch fans. If you got a friend who hates David Lynch and you don't want to be friends anymore, then send them this episode.
And a copy of Inland Empire.
Hey, you know what? The downloads are downloads, right?
That's right.
However we can get them. Well, until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
I wish, no matter what the weather is, I wish for all of you blue skies and golden sunshine internally all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.